Dosm Rider Review.
Hey YouTube, Dosm Rider here with the Dosms Rambles for Power Rangers Lost Galaxy. Just kidding, it's not Gaim for that yet. For like the 14th time or whatever, that Lost Galaxy one is still happening. I've gotten a little behind on my rewatch, but I'm hoping to buckle down soon. But I don't want to waste any more Gaim on Lost Galaxy. So I usually don't do any videos like this about current running Sentai Rider or PR series because I give my thoughts weekly on the RRR Podcast. If you have not checked that out, it is a really fun show. It's explicit, be warned, with myself, Shuquin Shinobi, Jedimon 2005, and Aerosol. I always have a link in the description of most of my videos for some time now of the podcast site, so feel free to check that out. We talk about latest Toku news, the weekly episodes, and ramble just about anything. But anyway, that's why I don't usually leave my thoughts. But unfortunately, this year I was unable to make the episode, or the segment of the episode where we discussed the finale of Gaim and a sort of general wrap-up. So I wanted to give my thoughts for anyone that was curious, and because I just felt like getting my thoughts out. It was like the Toku equivalent of being sexually frustrated. I don't know why I said that, but I just felt like I needed to get my thoughts out before I was able to move on to Drive. I'm going to try to keep this sort of as brief as possible. I don't want to be too long-winded. I'm just going to kind of go over my overall thoughts on the plot, do brief little thoughts on characters, and then just a finale. A finale to this video. I'm weird in this one, guys. Okay, so Gaim, if you don't follow me or any of my opinions on this, I've absolutely loved Gaim. Gaim really brought back my love of Rider. Now, don't get me wrong, Double through Wizard era, I liked a lot about it. I wasn't the hugest fan of Forze, but I loved Double, and I liked Wizard, and I really enjoyed O's. And I definitely had fun in those series. It's not like I was miserable. But they really got into sort of a stagnant formula of the same, like bullet points, the same plot points. And it was one of those things where you could just see the plot coming. You'd see something set up in the beginning or in an episode, and like you could play out exactly how it would happen in your head, and then it happened. And it just kind of got stale. And one of the things I liked about the earlier Heisei era Riders was Rider always had this sense of mystery. Not like always, but to some extent, most of the series had this ongoing mystery. There was always something mysterious to be found out. There was this level of intrigue. And oftentimes, in particular, very early on, this sort of disturbingness or creepiness to it. It's hard to describe, but there was definitely a certain quality to it that I felt was lost in the post-Decade era. This just sort of creepy mystery to it. And Gaim really brought that back, which was surprising because, we heard it was fruit-themed warriors. Definitely an oddball theme. There was a lot of extreme reactions. I personally, thought it was weird for sure, no doubt. But I thought maybe, this will be a fun show. And then we were hearing the writer, Urobuchi, Herbs and Sausage, I don't know. But I always mispronounce it. But he wrote some show before that was like super good and super depressing. So there was all kinds of different things, and I'm going to talk about a little bit in a few minutes about some of the early character descriptions based on what we heard and then what we got. But so I was very surprised, and Gaim really brought back that serialized, mysterious storytelling that I loved about early Rider, and I think improved on it. After the early setup, Gaim really flowed one into the other and kept you guessing, and the mysteries were constant. And even back in the past, I can't think of a Rider series where I would actively think about it so much when I wasn't watching it. Just the mysteries of Helheim and everything just intrigued me so much. And they did a really good job of keeping that flowing one arc into the next and revealing things at a steady pace. And just overall, they did a really good job of taking that, like I said, taking that formula of the more serialized, mysterious storytelling and improving on it, because I did like the older series. I thought Gaim was one of the best, if not the best, in terms of pacing and all that, and it was just great. And despite the theme, they really did bring back that sort of eeriness to it. Especially for me, one of the moments was when you found out that the Invests were people before, whether they were from the previous civilization or ours, and then some of the gray ones were rats. But that was disturbing. And then to find out stuff like, the first enemy that our main hero, Gaim, took down was his friend. It just brought that sort of disturbing, creepy level to it, which was really interesting. I'm gonna just try not to knock over every plot point, because there's a lot to go over in Gaim. Seriously, Gaim had a really rich storyline for a lot, and I could sit here for hours and just dissect each story arc. But my main point is that I really liked it, and I talked about the ending on the podcast, but I was very satisfied with the ending. And by the ending, I mean 46. I thought things ended well. I had a few small nitpicks and a few weird vibes from the way things turned out. But for the most part, it was all stuff that was easily looked over and I was satisfied. Now, the sort of ending of 47, I don't think it was necessary. I didn't mind the episode and I had an okay time watching it, but I just found it to be unnecessary. It's like, we didn't need it. I don't like the movie concept, and you know, unfortunately Gaim had a lot of dumb crossover movie interruptions, and Gaim was so much about its own story that all of these interruptions from the toku fapping world just seemed out of place, and putting the weird movie stuff in the end was weird, and it just did things that I felt were unnecessary. I mean, it was kind of neat to see Gridon turning into Kurokage, is a nice little nod to their sort of friendship, but that wasn't necessary. And with Michi, I like the way that 46 sort of left his fate open-ended. I mean, his brother was revived, and you got this vibe that, you know, Takatora could help him, but Michi was really lost, and you could just sort of interpret it any way you wanted, I thought. They just kind of left it open, especially after how terrible Michi was at the end. And I didn't need this reassurance that Michi was still a hero at the end. I just liked it being open-ended. Which is funny because I have rooted for characters' redemption stories that have done far worse than Michi. But I just didn't think that was necessary. Just the whole episode was unnecessary. The word of the day, guys, is unnecessary. And like I said, unfortunately, Gaim got a lot of really weird interruptions. I would have rather them just had another episode somewhere in the middle to flesh something out. But, yeah, I don't think 47 was necessary, so 46 is where it ended for me, really. And I was very satisfied with Gaim's storyline overall. Now, let's briefly knock down the characters, because there's a lot of them. Kota probably became my favorite main rider of all time. I really liked Kota. He was such a good hero. I love that, mainly, like at the core of it, that he never really gave up. Throughout the series, numerous times, whether it was Inves or Yggdrasil and Takatora, people were constantly trying to knock him down and discourage him from his goals, but he never let that get him down, and he constantly fought for humanity to the point where he was willing to sacrifice his own humanity and live in isolation with Mai and leave his friends and his home planet. A very selfless sacrifice to save Earth. And it very much reminded me of one of my other favorite main writers, which was Kenzaki from Blade, who also made a selfless sacrifice, which was a lot in the name of his friend. But still, Gaim's was the same reason I liked Kenzaki's sacrifice, but to a higher degree. And he was just such a great, like, inspiring hero. I think my only real problem with Kota is I felt he was too forgiving when it came to Michi. Numerous times he would try to reason with various enemies throughout the series and then sort of come to the conclusion that he had to do what he had to do. And I get that he was his friend, and I partly like the way he tried so hard with Michi because of his friend and revived Takatora for him. But ultimately, I wish he'd, even if he did at the end, you know, try to help Michi, I wish at some point during the revealed times of Michi being a jerk that he was a little more harsh, just because I was really looking forward to a confrontation on that level with how terrible Michi was to everyone. But that was really my only complaint, and something I really wanted to mention when I was going to do the wrap-up was, I always forget, because I got so focused on how much I like Kota because of how good he is as a hero, I forget why he became my favorite at the beginning, was because of how realistically he reacted to things. I mean, when he first got his powers, he was so excited. He was transforming over and over again in his room. He was using the armored rider suit to do common tasks. It was completely realistic, I think, to someone like me who get powers like that. It would just be like, holy crap, I have these awesome powers. I sound like I said I have awesome powers. Anyway, and then when he fought Zangetsu for the first time, he got seriously beaten down, and then he was terrified, and he quit. And I thought all of those reactions, from the excitement to being terrified when he realized that this was a real situation, I felt like he realistically went through all these emotions, and he had this great arc from this unsure of himself guy to a hero, and a sort of god in a way. But it was really, I think, one of the best arcs of any main writer in terms of development. Now, then we have Baron, good old Kaito, who went cray-cray at the end. There's one thing I never counted on, is that Kaito was a thundering loony. I liked Kaito for most of the series. He was definitely a good foil for Gaim and whatnot, and he was very straightforward about the way he was. And that was the thing, is that he was very much preaching about how the strong should be at top and the weak should be punished for being weak. And unlike a lot of the characters throughout the series who changed, he just sort of stayed the same in a lot of ways, but just the environment changed around him and he adapted to it. So, like, when he found out about what Yggdrasil's plan was essentially kill off most of humanity and have only the strongest survive, he liked that. He thought it was perfect. And later on, when all hell was breaking loose and Helheim was everywhere, he sort of gave this vibe of, like, or not this vibe, he said that I was built for a world like this, and it gave me a very Daryl Dixon vibe, if anyone's familiar with Walking Dead, where he sort of fits in the post-apocalypse world more, where you're fighting and stuff. I think I'm getting the blurry camera thing again, which I thought I fixed, so I apologize. I'll try to fix it by the next video. But anyway, that very much fit, until he went crazy at the end and decided to want to take over the world, and he was preaching about how he didn't want the weak to suffer, and everyone should be strong. Now, on the podcast, Aerosol pointed out to me and sort of explained it, which makes sense, that based on some certain things he said, and you can sort of logic it as he didn't like that the weak had to suffer, based on his backstory with, like, being pushed out by Yggdrasil and stuff, but he acknowledged the system and realized the only way that he could change the thing he didn't like was be a part of the system of the strong get stronger, the weak fall. So in my head, I think of that, and I think of his backstory. I'm like, alright, it makes sense, but it still doesn't click for me with how fast he changed, especially since he was helping out so much in the last arc with, you know, when everything was going to hell, and then all of a sudden he goes crazy. And like I said, when I really think about it, it can make sense. It's like I can make sense of it in my head, but I just don't feel it still. So I think it was sort of a misstep. I think that's one of Gaim's few larger missteps, was I feel like there could have been more time spent on Kaido's motivations to get me to understand it. It just seems so sudden. And then we got Michi, who, despite Koda being my favorite, I think Michi was easily the most fascinating. You know, when we got the early descriptions, it talked about how Michi was friend to Gaim, or Koda, and he was part of Team Gaim, and his brother was part of Yggdrasil and Zangetsu. So you're thinking, you know, based on my previous experience with writers, oh, he's going to be torn between them at some point, and there's going to be a big conflict. Do I choose my brother or my friend? No idea when I read those early character descriptions that he was going to try to kill both of them. Michi just went on this crazy ride, and it's funny because the seeds were so planted from the beginning. He had this sort of creepiness to him, and you could see that there was these subtle things about him having this desire to prove himself being better than his brother and on his own, and it is gradually turned into this web of lies until he had nobody, and he was insane, and it was just so fascinating to watch how smart and calculating he was, and he truly was, I think, one of the most evil writers. I mean, he killed, or for all intents and purposes, killed his brother, tried to kill his best friend with this intensity. Like, he really wanted Koda dead, and near the end, it was like a Walter White type thing, where he was like, I did it for Mai, and she's all I have, and I really didn't expect, which I thought was kind of perfect, for instead of having a big conflict with Michi, at the end of the day, he just kind of defeated himself. And with the exception of 47, I really liked his ending of just sort of being lost and having to find his way and being in solitude. It was kind of like he was being punished in the solitude, but there was still a potential glimmer of hope if you wanted him to be redeemed. But like I said, I could go all day about certain things, and Michi had so many fascinating things. But he was a great character, and I really want to, you know, mention how great the actor was at portraying all these different aspects of Michi, who could go from this sweet, I want to dance guy to having a murderous thought. Creepy stuff. Now we have Takatora, who, surprisingly, despite being one of the main four, I think out of the main four, he was definitely around the least. Particularly in the beginning, before Yggdrasil's motivations were revealed, he was very sparingly used, which I felt was effective because it gave this sort of power to Zangetsu, or the White Armored Rider as they called him, especially when Gaim was so afraid to face him at first. And I liked Takatora because at the beginning you thought he was a villain, and they made him sound like he was going to be like Oja or something in the descriptions, and you thought he was a villain, and you find out that in a sense he wasn't too dissimilar to Koda in his goals, and that he really wanted to save humanity. But unfortunately he took a different path, and he saw the only way of saving it is by doing this mass genocide. And then, after seeing Koda never giving up, he realized, hey, maybe I don't have to go with this one bleak way of saving people. Maybe we can save everybody. And he sort of rallied behind him and found this admiration for Koda. And despite how sparingly he was used, and there maybe could have been more to him, but I really liked him. I liked this idea of this basically good guy, mirroring Koda in a way, and just sort of coming to a different conclusion, but then, you know, realizing that maybe that wasn't the only way. And he I thought he was a good. He was a good guy. I'd vote for him. No, but I really liked Zangetsu. It's sort of hard for me to completely explain. Now everyone else, let's see. Try to knock some people out quick. Greedon. Greedon, I was really disappointed in. For whatever reason, I really like the Greedon suit. I think it has something to do with the fact that before we knew the exact descriptions, we thought he was going to be coconut. I don't know why that attached me to it, but he was in the early promotional material. It had the promotional poster had the core four and him, and like in one of the interviews, they said Greedon will be liked by older Rider fans. Like we kept waiting for his big moment, it never happened. I liked some aspects of him. I liked his partnership with Kurokage and then later Bravo, but I just felt that there could have been more, especially with him being the promotional materials. Kurokage, not too much to say. I think he served his purpose. He was okay. I really don't want to spend too much time on somebody. The Kurokage Troopers were the best characters in the show, way better than Michi. Now, Bravo is like a huge fan favorite. That I like Bravo okay. Love his suit. But I never really got that whole thing. I guess it's because he's one of those quirky characters and everyone loves him for that. In the beginning, I thought he presented a really interesting counter to the Beat Riders because in the very beginning it was like, you know, this Beat Rider competition and he was this X element of... Damn, that went really blurry. Sorry about that. He was from the military and an experienced fighter compared to the Beat Riders who weren't really that experienced at fighting in the beginning. And then near the middle, he got super annoying because the show was moving on past the Beat Rider fights and the controversy, and we were getting into the mysteries, and whenever he would show up, he would be like, the Beat Riders, they were doing it. It was so annoying. He would just pop up and troll them, and it was like he was in a different plot of the show. And then, after that, he did find out what was going on, but he was rarely around, and that's another, I think, one of Gaim's more missteps was him and Greedon. Could have been around more. I mean, there's a lot of characters to show, but in the middle they were very rarely around and could have been better utilized. And I liked him quite a bit at the end. I liked his quirkiness at the end, and I liked that he actually fought for the side of good, and that he was the one to tell that Michi was impersonating Zangetsu based on his sort of crush on him. And I liked him near the end. I just think he gets a lot more hype than he deserves. Now someone who should get hype is, at least it wasn't the Beat Rider Zack. I really liked Zack. He sort of came out of nowhere. I like this quirky bit we developed about how, you know, when the apocalypse was happening, he just said, at least they're not blaming the Beat Riders, and if you're not familiar, we developed this bit about terrible things happening, and Zack being okay with it as long as the Beat Riders weren't blamed. But he really turned into this really good character that he also became a hero in his own right, and he talked about how he found his purpose, and he was really about helping people, and at the end, he was even willing to destroy Baron so that... Wow, I'm like a Power Rangers person. He was willing to destroy him instead of kill to protect him. And I really liked Zack. He sort of came out of nowhere. Energy Riders, Duke. I thought Duke was kind of interesting. I feel like his suit was wasted on something like him. I feel like Baron should have just gotten Duke's suit instead of getting the Lemon Energy arms, but that's just me. But I like that he essentially boiled down to wanting data and being mad that this conflict wasn't going to be all about the power of his suits. I feel like I just don't want to spend too much time on him. I liked Ryoma okay, and he presented some interesting things. Marika I liked. I thought she was a really good mercenary. I sort of liked her sort of relationship with Baron, but at the same time it seemed kind of weird that she was just like, oh, I like to just follow powerful people, so... I'm trying to just get through these people quick so I'm not too long-winded, but... I liked her okay. This is going to be a lot of I liked her okays. Sid was just a jerk. Like, I like how he was seemingly just some sort of dealer, like a Lockseed or a Gaim member dealer. And then he just turns into this giant douche that was he was just really underhanded and just kind of a douche. I think that's my wrap-up of him. He was like the douche. Who else do we got? Am I forgetting any writers? I don't think so. We got the 4. If I'm forgetting anybody, who cares? We do have Mai, who wound up being way more important than I thought she would. He was sort of central to this, and I feel like without my cohorts, I'm lack of thoughts. But I liked Mai. I thought it was interesting how Michi seemingly was kind of in love with her, but her and Koda just had this friendship. I feel like Koda just wanted a friendship with her, whereas Michi wanted more, but he was still jealous of Koda. And then you had her sort of connection with Baron, and I'm just stating plot points. I really can't form an opinion on this character. I don't know why, but I liked Mai okay. I liked all those little side characters like Pico, who had memorable names, and Goro-chan being at the juice bar at the Groovy Smoothie or whatever. I liked the Overlords, and I love how they were introduced. Like, for the longest time, we didn't even have sentient villains, and then later we got them, and they were previous members of this race, and they essentially just went through what Earth's going through now, but they went through different decisions. And this is something I mentioned in our 46 discussion on the cast, but what I really like about Gaim, whether it was the writers or even the overlords, that there was never really, I mean, there was definitely bad people, like, you know, Michi and Redue, but at the end of the day, I felt there was never really a stereotypical evil villain that was like, I want to take over the world! At the end of the day, all the stories were about people, and about these decisions being made because of the situation that Helheim presented, whether it was the lymph race or whatever they call them, or the humans, with the writers, everybody. It was, at the end of the day, everyone had a different story, and you could sort of, on some level or another, see how and why they made their decisions, and it wasn't about this evil villain just wants to rule the world, or take over the city. It was about people and their decisions, and it's kind of like, one of the reasons I like stuff like The Walking Dead is that this extreme circumstance brings out these traits in people, and you see them change, and the decisions made, and how different people or different groups of people react to it differently, and that's what was fascinating to me about it. Just trying to keep it short because I don't want to keep this video too long. That's why I kind of glossed over some of the characters and just did a lot of thumbs upping. Gaim was a great series. Some of the best character development I've seen in Rider for not just Koda but everybody on some level. Like I said, for the most part, everybody, even though if I didn't agree with them, I could see how they got to certain decisions, except for maybe Koda when he just went cray-cray. But it was just a fascinating series that I found myself thinking about pretty much more than any other Rider series, and really brought back why I loved Rider and what separated my like of Rider from Rangers and stuff like that. So I really hope that I like Drive so far, and I'm really hoping that from here on out, I don't want every series to follow the same formula. You know, older Rider, they had some similar things to it, but for the most part, they were pretty different every year. I mean, they all sort of followed the serialized structure, but everything was very different. And I want to get back to that, where you can't predict what elements are going to be introduced, and you can't call a plot. I like Rider being mysterious like that, and I hope that every series brings something different to the table like it used to. But definitely, if you have not watched it, I don't know why you'd be watching this whole wrap-up video, but definitely check out Gaim. It was a great series. It's been a great year. Probably my favorite Rider series now. What can I say? It's been the Gaim of my life.